So, Miss Eliyora, tell me what's on your mind.
Spike. Just Spike.
I've often seen Spike as an excellent support for Twilight. I can only imagine just how her life would have gone without him. But perhaps you have something else about Spike that you would like to discuss.
Yes! As of late, he's more and more become the comedic punching bag. They're essentially turning Twilight's greatest support into a big joke. I know he's a kid, I know he's a fair target for some comedic relief, but the supportive aspect of his character has been completely shoved aside lately.
I see. And watching Spike being treated in this manner seems to have struck you more deeply than most?
I don't say this much, but I can really relate to Spike. I have this strong compulsion to help others, and if I can't, I feel useless and kind of have a mini breakdown, similar to Spike's strong insecurity about ever being useless to Twilight. Seeing Spike treated in such a way seems, to me at least, to say that when he isn't helpful, he's just a big joke.
He's certainly had to struggle here and there throughout the series, and I can think of several moments where he has been brushed aside or even been the brunt of others' frustrations. But despite the occasional feelings of being inadequate, it is clear that the main six do believe in him, and even appreciate him.
I acknowledge that. I'm more referring to how he's seen in the narrative. Like in the episode Rarity Takes Manhattan, he's carrying every piece of luggage for them, and Rarity does give him a treat in the form of a hot carrot, but then a random bird just steals it away. Also, when everyone else is working on the dresses for Rarity, a chance to help her that normally he would jump all over, he's nowhere to be seen. He's pushed aside by the narrative so thoroughly that he was forgotten.
And you feel that you can relate to how Spike is being treated, having to endure a position that is often brushed aside, perhaps even the feeling that everything that you've been working towards is less important in some way?
Yes. It's a feeling I experience on almost a daily basis. I put myself out a lot for my family, but more and more it became just what I was supposed to do, and not only was it not appreciated, but I was put to the side and forgotten a lot of the time. The only time I really register on their radars is when they need something.
I'm sure that can leave a lasting feeling of emptiness, having to be reminded that your efforts are not as effective or even as appreciated as you would have hoped. It is not an easy thing to live with. Might I ask just how long you've been feeling this way?
A lot longer than I've been willing to admit. It's a very painful feeling and not something I would ever wish on anyone. Seeing a character that goes through something similar, it kinda struck a nerve. No one as generous and helpful as Spike should ever be put to the side and forgotten about. He does so much, not just for Twilight, but for any of his friends when needed. It feels wrong to have him treated as unimportant, not to mention being comedically abused like he is.
How do you suppose he feels about it, though?
That's the worst part. I'm not sure. He's extremely happy when he's useful and shows drastic despair when he isn't, and I realize that he's not doing it to be thanked. But I can't begin to gauge how he feels about being on the receiving end of such unfair karma. All I can do is guess based on how I would feel, and I tell ya, I would feel wretched, like the universe is telling me that I'm only here to serve and take the pain.
I suppose that I really couldn't say that I've gone through everything that Spike has gone through, and I'm sure that you have endured through struggles that not many others have either. You two have unique experiences that may not be so easy to relate to. But I guess that begs the question. What do you suppose would happen to Spike if he suddenly decided to stop taking the short end of the stick, per se?
I would love to see that, actually. I think it would be great character growth for him. A step towards finding his own independent path. I know he spent his entire life as Twilight's assistant, but I always wondered, who is Spike on his own? Like, who is the dragon when he isn't rushing to help others? I want to see him start to step into his own scales and take some steps to figuring that out for himself. There were some signs of it in Dragon Quest, but that was more about his draconic self. I think if he were to stop taking the short end of the stick, he could start taking steps towards finding his own person, rather than just being the child that is dependent on being Twilight's assistant. After all, one way or another, he's not going to be forever.
I've often wondered whether Spike might lose something truly precious if he ever decided to stop being the helper and wanted to strive his own path. We may think that Spike is being treated as a side note with everything that he has gone through. We may believe that life itself is treating him as a punching bag. We may even want to see him become independent and be his own person, for lack of a better word. However, there is something that I think he may be learning throughout all his struggles. Something that he may be in dire need of later in life. There are times in the series, perhaps more so than any other character, that Spike is learning about the benefits of sacrifice. This is something that may not seem so important on the surface, but is actually an incredibly effective method for teaching humility and patience. It is often very hard to believe that sacrifice could actually be something desirable, but I believe that because Spike has been learning more about sacrifice than perhaps any other character in the show, he is in a very unique position to be an inspiring example. Like you say, Spike has had to work hard just to get an occasional thank you, and there have been times when life itself seems to treat him as being unimportant. But I have to admire the fact that despite his struggles, Spike is actually happy with being an assistant, being a friend, even at times being a servant who isn't getting noticed. For those others who can relate to Spike, both his struggles and even how life is treating him as a less important individual, I have to think that Spike's moments of happiness reflect just how one can overcome that feeling of emptiness. We may never be able to control how life treats us, but we always have a choice when it comes to how we will react to what life throws at us. Does that make sense, Eliyora?
Yeah, actually it does. Spike has always had that one up on me, being able to stay positive despite all. You're right, he takes it all very well with only the occasional negative reaction. He may not deserve to be treated in such a way, but he takes it well.
So, does that mean you can better appreciate his character, even when his efforts are going unnoticed or even unappreciated?
Absolutely. I have always appreciated Spike's character.
Well, Eliyora, I hope that perhaps you might have learned a little something from this experience, and perhaps there may be a day somewhere down the line when life decides to treat your efforts a little better. But perhaps in the meantime, you may think a little differently about what you can learn from your experiences?
You think so, huh, Doc? Well, let me tell you a little story, my friend. It's about a young and hopeful Eliyora who innocently believed that the family around her saw her as more
It's
than
good
just
to
a
be
doormat
helping.
to serve them.